Welcome to this video on English literature. My name is Dr. Gilbert Yeo, and I'm a lecturer here in the Department of English Language and Literature. I'm happy to be able to introduce to you what studying English literature in NUS is like. As a way to introduce myself further, let me present to you one of the modules that I teach here in the Arts faculty. This is the module EN3224, the 20th Century. As the title suggests, this module surveys the literature that was produced in the 20th century. It looks at important 20th century writers such as James Joyce, Virginia Woolf, T.S. Eliot, and Jeanette Winterson. In this module, we explore some landmark works of the 20th century, such as T.S. Eliot's epic poem, The Waste Land, and Virginia Woolf's poetic novel, To the Lighthouse. Both of these works exemplify what critics call modernism in English literature. So one of the questions we examine is, what is modernism in English literature? One of the things that students will learn is that modernism is a period in English literature where there was a lot of literary experimentation attempted by writers. For instance, we see Virginia Woolf experimenting with a new kind of narrative technique called stream of consciousness narration, which attempts to represent the jumbled and chaotic inner thoughts of our mind. Or we see T.S. Eliot writing poetry that experiments with the technique of montage or editing that he borrowed from cinema. In this video, I will try to give you a sense of what studying English literature in NUS is like. Here in the Arts faculty, the English literature major covers the major periods of British and American literature, as well as offers modules in world literature, film, visual media, critical theory, gender, and psychoanalysis. You have the opportunity to take modules on subjects like literature and the environment, South Asian fiction, film studies, and the short story as a literary genre. You will also be taught how to engage with critical theory, which is theory about literary texts that will help you to think about literary texts in new and unusual ways. Allow me to start by observing what a typical English literature module is like. Here in NUS, an English literature module usually covers 6 to 7 texts. For example, in my colleague's module EN3222, the 18th century, she covers mainly 6 novels. So in this module, you will be studying 6 novels, which include works like Ephra Behns' Oroonoco, Daniel Defoe's Roxana, Samuel Richardson's Pamela, and Jane Austen's Emma. One observation we can make here is that, on average, students will be studying 1 text every 2 weeks. This faster pace of studying literature is different from what students may be accustomed to when they studied literature in junior college or in their former schools. In my experience, most students who become English literature majors or minors do manage to adjust to this faster pace. One way students do so is that they learn how to read more strategically and selectively. Another way that students manage the heavier reading load is to take modules that balance each other out. For instance, if you are taking a module that has long novels, you can complement it with a module on poetry where the readings are shorter. In my colleague's 18th century literature module that I highlighted above, students do not just read novels. Rather, they will also be examining some larger literary questions. This module looks at 6 novels because it is in this period in the 18th century that the novel as a genre first emerges. Students can then examine the question, why is it that other prose works written in the earlier centuries are not considered novels? Why is it that these emerging works in the 18th century are considered novels? This of course leads to the bigger critical question on what a novel is. How do we go about defining the genre of the novel? So in studying English literature as a major, you will also be engaging with larger critical questions and issues. For instance, when we study a work like Toni Morrison's Beloved, we will engage with questions like, what is the Black female experience like, and why has American history traditionally excluded the experience of African Americans? How does the genre of magic realism that Morrison uses engage the history of slavery in America? Is Beloved a postmodern novel, and if so, what are its postmodern characteristics? In English literature modules, the assignments given to students usually include a combination of tests and exams, short and longer essays, as well as class presentations. There's also emphasis on class participation, where students are encouraged to voice out their views in class and to engage fellow students and the lecturer in discussion. Here, I would especially like to say that as you make the transition to university, the essay assignment becomes all important. Singapore's school system tends to emphasize timed exams, but as you come to the university, especially in a major like English literature, but also in other art subjects, being able to write good essays is of greater importance. For many literature modules, a heavier weightage of the assessment is given to essays. So as you begin your undergraduate studies, one skill you should pay attention to is how to write effectively and how to write good essays. In a major like English literature, you should find out what is expected in a good literature essay and develop your skills in writing strong essays. Through the program, English literature majors learn how to write effectively, perform complex analysis, and read texts insightfully. As an English literature major, you will get the opportunity to study the history of British and American literature. For instance, you'll become familiar with the period of Romantic poetry or the period of the Victorian novel. And you also get to read important works from the literary canon, like Milton's Paradise Lost, Wordsworth's The Prelude, and Shakespeare's plays. Knowing the history of British and American literature will give you a good foundation for further literary study. In addition, you will also be taking modules on various subjects. For instance, you can take modules on Singapore literature, cultural studies, film and religion, literature and ecology. As a major, English literature is amazingly vast and is a major that truly stretches your intellectual horizons. Alongside the literary works, lecturers will also introduce critical theory readings that will help you think about the text in deeper ways. For instance, you could be taught how to take a deconstructive approach towards a text, a method founded by the philosopher-theorist Jacques Derrida. Such an approach would stress the dethronement of the author in a text and argue that the author doesn't write the text, but it is in fact the text that writes the author. Or a lecturer may introduce feminist theory to prod you to think more deeply about the relationship between literature and gender. For instance, can a writer represent female sexuality outside masculine parameters? Is there such a thing as a feminine writing? I will now go on to outline what majoring in English literature looks like. If you are going to major in English literature, the first module you will take is EN 1101, Introduction to Literary Studies. If you are not sure and still considering whether you should major in English literature, then it is also a good idea to take EN 1101. This is an introductory module and it will help you to decide whether the English literature major is for you. EN 1101 offers a basic introduction to the study of literature, and it covers the three basic genres of literature, which are poetry, narrative fiction, and drama. In recent years, students taking EN 1101 in the first semester studied works like Toni Morrison's The Bluest Eye and short stories from Eileen Chang's short story collection Love in a Fallen City. They also studied a South African play by Athol Fugard, The Island, as well as poems by the Caribbean writer Derek Walcott. EN 1101 is also offered in semester 2, and in the second semester, students study texts like Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby and Ishiguro's An Artist of the Floating World. They also study Samuel Beckett's absurdist play Waiting for Godot, as well as the film Hero by the Chinese director Zhang Yimou. Generally, students who wish to major in English literature take EN 1101 in the first semester of their first year. In the second semester of the first year, they will go on to take at least one or two 2000 level English literature modules. For the more ambitious students, it is also possible for them to take a 3000 level English literature module at this stage. The department offers a good range of 2000 level modules. In these 2000 level modules, the emphasis is not so much on mastering subject knowledge, but on equipping students with some basic skills or certain interpretative tools or conceptual paradigms which they can use to read and analyze literary texts. For instance, EN 2202 Critical Reading is a module that helps students to hone their skills in the close reading of literary texts. EN 2207 Gender and Sexuality in Literature is a useful module that introduces students to reading literature through the lenses of gender and sexuality. EN 2277 Love's Word is a newly introduced module that gets students started on seeing how they can read literary, philosophical, and theoretical texts in relation to one another. From the second year onwards, literature majors will start to take 3000 level modules. The 3000 level modules are more advanced modules that develop students' subject knowledge in the various fields and aspects of literature. The department offers a rich spectrum of 3000 level modules. There are 3000 level modules that cover the main periods of English literature from the English Renaissance to the 20th century. There are, for instance, modules that survey British literature in the 18th century and in the 19th century. There are also modules that survey the history of American literature. American Literature 1 looks at 19th century American literature, while American Literature 2 focuses on 20th century American literature. In addition, there are modules on other aspects of literature, as well as on film and cultural studies. For instance, there are modules on literature and psychoanalysis, feminism, and science fiction. There are also modules on the horror film as well as on visual culture, which examines visual images not just in film, but in art history, popular culture, and online media. The 3000 level modules also look at literature from other parts of the world beyond England and America. There are, for instance, modules on post-colonial literature, South Asian, and Singapore literature. In the fourth year, most literature majors would go on to do an honours year. To qualify for the honours track, you need a CAP of 3.2, which is a grade average of between B and B-. This grade average is not difficult to attain, and most students would go on to do the fourth year honours track. Fourth year honours students can choose to write an honours thesis, or write a short research essay of about 15 pages, or they can simply take 4000 level modules to fulfill their honours year requirement. Once again, the English department offers a wide range of 4000 level modules. There are, for instance, modules on utopias and dystopias, modern poetry, and world literature. 4000 level modules are more intensive and they are conducted in the form of seminars. Besides being a major, students also have the option of minoring in English literature. To minor in English literature, you will need to take 6 English literature modules. Here, I should also add that students can also do a minor in film studies, which requires them to take 6 film studies related modules. The English department is the department that is in charge of running the film studies minor. As a kind of summary, I would say that the English literature major is a fulfilling subject in how it exposes students to a wide range of issues in life and in the world. As they progress in the major, students learn to be versatile in their thinking as well as develop strong abilities in critical analysis. In addition, they also develop into highly effective writers who can articulate complex ideas. As a literature major, you also get to meet fellow like-minded students who are passionate about literature and the arts, and some of your fellow students may become lifelong friends. As literature majors are highly versatile and have strong intellectual and analytical abilities, they can find employment in a wide variety of professions. English literature majors often go into teaching and education. Many also find employment in government ministries and statutory boards. Others find jobs in corporate communications departments, publishing, journalism, and the arts industries. We have former students who are now working in government ministries like the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Ministry of Defense. There are also former students currently working in the media and arts sectors in Singapore. For instance, Lester Heo, who is a former student of mine, is now an assistant manager at the National Gallery. Tan Su Ann, who is also a former student, is currently a journalist with the Straits Times. Su Ann's articles have appeared recently in the papers. I recently saw one of her pieces where she interviews Minister of State Chee Hong Tat on the subject of business transformations in the COVID-19 era. I have come to the end of my video and would like to thank you for watching it. If you have any arising questions about the English Literature major, feel free to drop me an email. You can also pay a visit to the English Department website. There is also the upcoming live Q&A webinar on 21st and 22nd July that you may wish to attend. Thank you.